right, once again, it's time for Off the Top Sportscast. I'm John, and that big guy right there is Roy. Roy, I have the topic for today, but first, please hit the like, please hit the subscribe. We love all the comments. Roy, we're going to start looking at the state of the playoffs. Right now, we are in a week, what is it, 12 of the regular season? Maybe it's I guess it's week 12, depending on if you had your bye or not, right?
Yeah, that's week 12.
Right. So we're going to look at who is in the playoffs currently, the playoff standings, who is on the outside looking in, and what moves we think potentially might be made. So let's say the NFC, because I think there's a clearer picture on the NFC first.
Yeah. So when you look at who's in it right now,
Right. So let's talk about the division winners, right? So we got Detroit on the top of their division. I think that's a stone cold lock, right? I think Detroit has been looming for about 2 years. Everything has come together nicely for them. They're doing it, remember, without their number one pass rusher, which is crazy because if you had to say one part of the Lions that that was maybe vulnerable would be their defense. You know what I mean? So that's impressive. Who's the next top of the division? It would be right now Atlanta, right?
in top of their division is Atlanta, which really that's when you look at the division, that's one of, the West and the South, which Atlanta is the weakest divisions. They're up there with 6 and 5. That's ridiculous.
Right. So who's in their division?
Atlanta, Tampa, New Orleans, Carolina.
Right. So that's an interesting division because in the beginning of this year, New Orleans shot out the gate like a bullet, and everybody jumped on that New Orleans train. I never did. You never did. But you got to admit that for a second you were like, whoa, what's this team going to be?
Yeah.
And now even that team had some losses. Shaheed went down. That was a big part of their offense. So who knows what they could have been. But at the end of the day, I think this division was going to come down to Atlanta and Tampa, no matter what. And Tampa lost two huge wide receivers, and they put in their tight end, Otten, and he just was like, no worries, just throw me the ball and I got you. So I don't want to say Baker Mayfield has become a quarterback that it doesn't matter who he has in, but right now he is playing that way. Now they haven't won the games, but at some point you go, that doesn't even matter. How they're playing in these games are pretty impressive because you figure Mike Evans just came back. Now they're incorporating him with Otten, and they got better, right? They blew out the Giants this week, which if you're struggling, look to whenever you play the Giants, and that's going to be your get right game. So Tampa, I think, still has a chance to win that division against Atlanta. What have you seen from Atlanta?
Yeah, the thing with, again, why did they get a quarterback in the draft? Is because they couldn't rely on Cousins. But you cannot deny that Cousins is a quarterback, I should say, that is a good quarterback. Mm-hmm. When healthy, that was the issue. When healthy. So the problem is, the Falcons, nice little team, but they're going to come up against some games. They're going to come up to games that can knock them down. That's the problem. But I see the Atlanta, man, you should be very happy that you signed a quarterback like Cousins. it made you relevant. Remember last year? Who was their quarterback last year?
Ritter.
Who else? It was a quarterback by committee. They didn't like him. He was gone. They got somebody else.
Yeah.
So right now, the Atlanta's in a good spot. The problem with Atlanta is they got some games ahead of them that could, turn out to put them on the ends.
Well, the end of the season is coming, so and everybody's heightened, right? The thing about Atlanta, we can sit here and say, now knowing what we know, they shouldn't have drafted the quarterback, right? Okay, we can sit here and say that. But let me tell you this. If the Jets would have drafted that quarterback, they'd be in a better spot right now.
True.
So they did what we've been saying everybody should have done, right? You got Aaron Rodgers and you didn't get a backup in there. And the most inevitable thing happened. Aaron Rodgers got hurt because he's old. So we ragged on the Jets for not getting a backup and not planning for the future. Atlanta did exactly that. They got the quarterback for now, and they've put in something for the future. I think they did exactly what they needed to do. Now we can all debate how high he went and all the things that they could have done with a pick or whatever. Sometimes it's as simple as when the guy's there, you pick him. You know what I mean? You can overthink things all you want, but when there's a guy sitting there in front of you, you can trade back and mess around, or you can just go, man, I'm just going to go get the guy, and I'm going to sleep better at night knowing that guy is behind Kirk Cousins. Now,
yeah. Now, let me tell you this. Let's say they win. Let's just say. But it's going to be hard. You got a 7-4 team, 9-2. Then what comes next? Vegas, 2-9. Giants, 2-9. Washington, 7-5. Carolina, 3-8. They just got to get the next two. If they can lock in the next two, they're in good shape. They're in great shape.
And we got to remember that it's not just them, because they're in front of Tampa, so Tampa's got to catch them. So, and Tampa's hurt. Tampa, so they just got to keep up, and the only thing that I heard you say there that's interesting to me is that they don't play any of they're done with their division. So that makes it harder because now the tiebreakers are what the tiebreakers are. So, right. So you got to really win the games you need to win. So we've got Detroit, we've got Atlanta, we've got at the top Washington, right?
You got Detroit, Eagles, Seahawks, Atlanta, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Washington.
So the Eagles are an interesting team because out of all of the people you stated, they're the ones that I don't know if what we're seeing right now is really them. I don't know if that team is really them. Right now, they're living and dying by Saquon going absolutely nuts. That they're living and dying by.
So should listen, when we think about that, are we saying Saquon was coming up lame with the Giants all the time because he wanted to get the heck out of there? Because right now, he's playing really good this year. He's been healthy pretty much. What do you say?
Well, you get healthier when people are blocking for you. You're going to be healthier when you get good blocking and you can get to the second level as opposed to bad blocking and a 300-pound monster is landing on you. When you're getting taken down at the second level by a safety, that guy's tackling you a lot different than if it's a linebacker shooting down and hitting the gap, or a guy like Williams or Aaron Donald hitting you at the line. So you're going to be healthier just by proxy. But I will say this: he's been worth every damn penny. So we've got a couple of running backs we'll talk about in this podcast that whatever we wanted to say in the beginning that they devalued running backs and all this stuff, they might have devalued them money wise, but as far as valuable in the scheme of your offense, running backs are just as valuable, if not more valuable, if you've got a stud up there.
That's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
now we've got Green Bay, right? Green Bay is a good team. They've got all the components of a good team. They're just young, right? They just need a little seasoning.
Okay. Okay.
That's how I feel about them. They Green Bay is the NFC's version of the Houston Texans. They've got all the components.
Well, that is big.
They got running back, right? Mixon, Jacobs, and then you've got Mixon. You've got wide receivers. You have Nico Collins, Tank Dell over in Green Bay. You've got Watkins and Jaden Reed. Actually, it's Reed, then Watkins. And then you also have um, Romeo Dobbs as well. You've
Yeah.
got a serviceable defense. I think Houston's defense is probably better, but so you've got a lot of the same components, and you've got two young quarterbacks that are still in development, but you have your franchise. To me, it's the same kind of team. The only difference is your head coach in Green Bay is offensive, and your head coach in Houston is defensive.
Now, when you look at Green Bay's final games, Miami, which their record does not post the type of style and strength of a team, Detroit, right. Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, Chicago. That's not at the end of the season. That's not the kind of schedule you want.
Yeah. Well, if you're a real team, that's the type of schedule you're going to get. Because we got to also remember too, they've got the second place schedule. If they go where they want to go, they'll have the first place schedule next year. It's only going to get harder. So you'll find out a lot about Green Bay in these next 6 weeks.
That's true. Yeah.
So the NFC has a couple of funny things that's happened, right? Because you got the NFC champs, the San Francisco 49ers, who have been banged up all year. But they're still in the mix, and they're getting healthy. So
it may just be a little too late.
You think so?
The only thing I think it's a little too late for them. The only thing I think is, maybe they can hurt somebody, be their spoiler, but I think it's a little too late. If I was the 49ers, tell you the truth, I would try to keep it as healthy as possible. Let's work on stuff. But when, and of course you want to win, but don't look at hurting yourself. Look at going into next year, and let's get some things right this year.
You know what? The only thing I will say about the 49ers that I have not liked, some other teams, when guys got hurt, other guys stepped up, like for the 49ers, Mason, that running back stepped up big while Christian McCaffrey was out, right? Jennings, that wide receiver has stepped up. When their other guys start coming back, they're not integrating the guys who kept them going while those guys were hurt. They're kind of going, okay, now you move back here and out of the game plan totally. And to me, that's a mistake. If you find talent, use the talent even when your starters come back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they haven't done that. And I think that's been their Achilles heel. I think Ricky Pearsall has not worked out the way they thought he was going to work out. I know he got shot, but he's come back. He's been back. He just hasn't been integrated into the offense. And I think we're really seeing how much they really needed Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah. Thank goodness. But again, that's the NFC.
Yep.
The AFC is where the monsters are at.
The AFC is so muddied. So let's get into it.
Kansas City, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Houston, Baltimore, and then the two surprises: Chargers, Broncos.
Yeah. So Kansas City's the top. They've got one loss by Buffalo. They nearly lost. So they nearly lost. They blocked a kick. Played Buffalo, lost. Nearly lost again to the Carolina Panthers. What we're seeing is that left defensive end really, 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 left tackle really, really, really being a problem because the pass rush now knows they are teeing off right on Pat's blind side. And what that's doing is just throwing his whole timing off. It's making him hitch a little bit. He's looking left before he does anything. He hikes the ball and he looks left. You got to, right? You got to know if your guy's on the ground, you need to know the other guy, where the defensive guy is. So
That's right.
I think that's really coming to roost with Kansas City, not shoring up that offensive line, not getting more depth there. But Kansas City's Kansas City. And Patrick and the good quarterbacks find ways to win. And that's what they've been doing.
And you can't listen, nobody's going to say they haven't put together a team and they're winning. Hunt, look at Hunt. He came back. Who thought that? And he's doing great. He's doing great. I think if they didn't have him, I don't think they would be doing as good. Tell you the truth. I think that is the biggest key to why they have success. Don't tell me anybody else. If you could run the ball, you could throw the ball. And that's what they've been doing. And I think that's what's made them better. Again, forget everybody else. We can lock down receivers. Anybody can lock down a receiver. But if you're trying to lock down a receiver and you're 10, 15 feet, yards down the field and the guy's breaking a run, it's too late. Once he passed those linemen, it's too late. So I think that's where Kansas City is proved to be a team that has a little bit of a formula.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people have now noticed, that defensive line is stout, the defensive front four. But once you get past those guys,
there's nothing there.
A little softer. And them trading away their cornerback before the beginning of this year, that's coming back to haunt them. The fact that they didn't make a play, they made a play, but they didn't get the Tre'Davious White, that's a factor. They haven't made the moves in the defensive end because it's almost like everybody's been telling them your offense is so, not what it was, but your defense is good. So they didn't look at their defense. They got Hopkins. They didn't get the cornerback they needed. They might have been better served getting the cornerback than getting Hopkins. Because if you're asking me, what do I have more confidence in? Patrick Mahomes making a whoever wide receiver better, or your defense standing up to top-notch wide receivers? I would have said, I'll take Pat throwing to Joe Schmo. But they went the other way and got, D-Hop. So that's an interesting division because out of that division right now in the playoff race, there's 3 teams. I don't think anybody saw when you shed your 2 top wide receivers like the Chargers did, and Williams and Allen, and you don't replace them, and you bring a new coach in, and that coach has a whole different philosophy, and you bring in some running backs, and you bring in defense, and you draft. Actually, I thought their draft was really good, really, really good. But they didn't draft for offense. They draft for the base, their offensive line, their defensive line. They didn't go showy names. Um, and he's got those guys. Harbaugh, man, is a good coach. He's got those guys playing to the top of everybody's ability.
Yeah. The question is, okay, you got it, but how long can you keep that? Right now it's something new. Dre Ball did the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's see what next year ends up being. Let's see how this draft ends up being.
And what you got to do is break out of being the Chargers, because this ain't new. The Chargers winning games during the regular season, looking good during the regular season, that ain't new. That happened before with Herbert. That happened all those years with Phillip Rivers. I mean, we're going all the way back to when Drew Brees was there, when they broke through and went to the the Super Bowl. So I mean, they've got to do something in the playoffs to break the Chargers moniker of a good team that just doesn't do anything in the playoffs. And then you've got Denver. And I will say this. I thought Sean Payton, when they talked about him, I didn't know who they were talking about. When everybody was saying Sean Payton, the offensive genius, I was going, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember an offensive genius. I remember a guy who had a really good team, talented guys, Drew Brees. Uh, uh, they had a couple of different
Wide
running back
receiver.
iterations. They had a couple of different wide receivers, Colston and Ingram and Jimmy Graham. And he won with those guys. Yeah, those guys were great. But when those guys left, he went back to being nothing. I think this was his best coaching job he's ever done. Because Bo Nix right now looks like the truth. He really looks great. And he's throwing to nobody, really. So once they get him some offensive help, I think we're going to see some good things out of Bo Nix.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What about Baltimore?
Well, it's not Baltimore. What about Pittsburgh, right? They're at the top.
Yeah.
I kind of listen. You play the teams you play, and you beat them, and they have done that.
Well,
It's
let me ask
been
you
in.
this. Do we say Tomlin is a genius?
I think Tomlin is a great, great coach, and I think for years Tomlin has been getting more out. I don't want to say nothing, because they have talent, but more out of lesser talent than any other coach other than Bill Belichick.
You sure?
Yeah. Yeah. Because listen, they're wide receivers, right? Pickens is their best wide receiver. That's it. That's all they got. And Pickens is a flawed wide receiver. He has no route tree. He's not a route running wide receiver. You're not going to throw a timing route to Pickens. He's going to go rogue every 9 plays. He's not going to play hard. He's a big guy who can block his butt off. But every
Right.
once in a while, he's not going to block at all. He's going to take that play off. He's going to be smelling the flowers. There's going to be a butterfly that goes by. Somebody jingles the keys over here, and he's like, huh? He's just a kid. He is not a full-grown adult professional football player yet. And that's all you've got right now. Yeah, Austin, fast little guy, hasn't proven that he can get open with consistency, do anything to really affect the game. You've got your 2 running backs who Najee has played the best year of his career this
Yep.
year. He's hitting the hole like a guy his size because years before this, he was not hitting the hole that hard.
Plus, they got another wide receiver. I mean, excuse me, running back,
Warren,
who's been really great.
he hits the hole like a guy Najee's size, but he's small. And then they got Fryermuth, who's a consistently good, tight end. Those guys are good. But if we started to go, well, would you pick this guy over your guy? Would you pick this guy over? You're not going to get out of 32 teams, you maybe get 10 teams that go, yeah, I'll pick that guy over my guy. But a lot of teams are not going to pick that guy in Pittsburgh, And yet he's getting the most out of Russell Wilson. But Russell Wilson's not doing anything special per se. You know what I mean?
Well, he's not doing anything special, but he looks a lot better than he looked in Denver.
Yeah.
His career was technically over after Denver.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think Pickens is a better wide receiver than Juju and Sutton combined.
True. But again, we have a rookie. Did they change something in receivers that I didn't know about?
Oh, they lost receivers.
So what I'm saying is,
yeah, that's true.
He's in a system that suits him better. Yes, you are right. You have better, but then you go, hey, Bo Nix looks like a pro quarterback.
Yeah, but another thing you got to take into account too, in Denver, they weren't running the ball like they run in Pittsburgh. So he had to throw the ball more because they were behind the sticks more. In this offense, when they get to third down, they're 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. He very seldom has a 3rd and 8, right? So that's going to help you be better. That alone. And another thing that helps you be better is the confidence to know my defense is going to hold this, is going to get me a 3 and out.
It's true, but this is the thing interesting with Pittsburgh. They were showing a lot of throws that he was making, and they were doing a comparison. He's throwing the ball with more air.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, okay, you're throwing with more air. The difference is if you threw that same ball in Denver with the receivers you have, they may not get him. Where now you're throwing a ball like that to Pickens, he has time to change his body, get it. So the thing is, yeah, he's resurrected his career, but I don't consider if he doesn't get signed with Pittsburgh and goes with somebody else that may not have that same, I think it ends up looking the same as he did in Denver. Because if you look at the balls, he's throwing it up to come and try to go get it. You win it. It's there, but you got to go win it. I don't really like a quarterback like that, throwing it up all the time. And you got to win. I like you to throw it, right here, give it to me, throw. And that's what they were comparing. He throws more of a loft ball compared to the other quarterback throws more of a straight ball. But I worry that may not, if you get into a playoff system, if that's going to win you a game.
Yeah, so he's throwing these moon balls and letting Pickens make the adjustment to the ball, as opposed to him throwing a ball that adjusts to where Pickens is running.
That's right.
2 things. Yes, that's a problem because when you get into the playoffs and people want to take something away, they're going to take that away. I'm going to give Pickens all the underneath stuff that he doesn't run. I'm going to make him run it. I'm going to make him short and make him run a route because I know that's not his strength. The other thing is it might be because Pickens can't run routes. Pickens is not a guy who gets open. That's why he's throwing those balls like that. He's throwing those balls up because he's thinking 2 things is going to happen. My guy comes down with it or I get pass interference. Those are my best options. And if neither one of those happens, You go, okay, defense, get out there and give me the ball back because we're going to run the same thing. Because if you run a deep route like that, let's say 5 times, and 2 times Pickens makes an incredible adjustment, and 1 time you get a great pass interference, and you're winning on that. Because
Yeah,
those other 2 times, man, who knows what the scenarios is going to be after that. So
yeah,
I don't think they can win like that. And I'll tell you this, the end of their schedule is difficult. And Baltimore ain't going nowhere. You know, they're right there in the race. They got to play Baltimore again. This time, I believe it's in Baltimore. And a lot of things are going to be decided these next couple of weeks. Here's the fact of the matter. Even if Pittsburgh wins the division, let's say they win it. Fantastic. Good job. Is anybody scared of them in the playoffs? The real contenders, are they scared of them?
no,
I
I
don't,
don't think
I
anybody's
don't
really
think so.
scared. Mm-mm.
I don't think Kansas City cares if they play Pittsburgh. Buffalo don't care. Buffalo beat Pittsburgh last year with one guy, Shakir. Diggs didn't do anything. Gabe didn't do anything. Cook didn't do anything. Shakir and then Josh ran and broke their backs on that long run on the left side. So we don't care about Pittsburgh. Like, who nobody's I'd rather see Pittsburgh than I'd rather see Baltimore or
That's right.
Cincinnati.
Yeah. And if you notice too, even though it's interesting that they're winning, but they're still playing a two quarterback game. Fields is still
Look,
coming in for some snaps. What that tells me is, hey, I still want to keep this guy a little warm and in the flow of things because guess what? We may have to go to him at one point.
and Fields making that mistake when he came in for that game, for the Baltimore game, and he was running for the first down. He had the first down, and he slid early and didn't get it. Oh, that's a backbreaker for Fields because that tells you that's a football IQ thing. You're just not getting it. You had one play and one thing to understand. I need a first down, and you messed that up. That doesn't bode well for his future going wherever he's going to go in the future. He may end up back in Pittsburgh as a backup because that's his best option.
Yeah, good point. Good point. What
So
about the Houston?
so I think Houston has that locked up. Houston, has gone through, Nico Collins just came back. Tank Dell in the beginning of this year was coming back from an injury. Steph Diggs goes down with an injury, season ending. So that guy who they thought they were going to have, they don't have. Knicks went down for a little bit. Now he's back. When they're all together, they're a
They look good.
formidable offense. They're as formidable as anybody. But in reality, this offense has been running through Joe Mixon. That's the
Yeah,
bell cow right now.
yeah. I'm again when I see that I'm going, man. Doesn't Cincinnati wish they had him now? Um,
Another
again,
running back that was not, they traded him away almost for nothing. So another running back in the scenario that changed hand this year, and we didn't even talk about Derrick Henry changing hands and changing basically that Baltimore offense. It's amazing what Mixon has done over there.
yeah, it's true. It's true. Now they've lost a lot of games. These last couple games, he's thrown some interceptions. That can hurt him. That can hurt him when it comes to playoff times. You're looking at. Let's look at this really quick. Let's see if it comes up. Houston
But
schedule.
like I told you, they're a young team and they're developing. If you're telling me for the future that they have their future is bright.
But this is the problem. They got the Jaguars.
Win,
I hate teams like that who got nothing to lose.
true.
You got Miami, KC, Baltimore, Titans. You got some teams that's not a very good that right there is really for me a recipe that you may not even make the playoffs because
Yeah,
they can go with L's.
and I'm gonna tell you right now, the Titans are not laying down for anybody.
They're
They
not.
might not. They're not playing their best. They're not whatever you want to say. They got a good defensive line. Yeah, their offensive line is a little suspect. Their corners are a little suspect. They got good wide receivers. They got a good running back in Tony Pollard. And they got a quarterback who A doesn't care about throwing interception and B ain't scared of whatever window you give him. He goes, yeah, I can make it. So if you have to win that game to solidify something, you better play your guys because that's not going to be a easy game at the end of the year.
No, it's not. It's not cakewalk.
So let's go to the AFC East. Ooh.
What do you say? What about those Buffalo Bills?
Listen, baby, Buffalo, we just doing what we normally do. We're on pace to do what we normally do. Uh, it's impressive how we've done it this year. I don't think we've even seen the best version of our team yet because we haven't had our whole team out there all at once yet. We're going to be getting Matt Milano back here. Maybe not this week, maybe the next week. It looks like Matt Milano can play, but if anybody knows anything about Buffalo, they will take another week. They'll let you sit for another week. They don't care. Look at against Kansas City. You would have thought, hey, Keon, can you play? Keon was like, I can play. Yeah, my wrist hurts, but I can play. And Buffalo was like, no, we're gonna need you later. Dalton Kincaid, hey, how's your knee? Can you play? He was like, my knee. He practiced that week against Kansas before we played Kansas City, and they were like, no, we're gonna rest you. And so he got off Kansas City. Now a bye week. Now he'll be back. So we are not worried. We do not put our guys in jeopardy for one game. So what I'm hoping is at the end of this season, we're going to start to click with everybody coming back. And it's going to be a different game every time. Because, yeah, we've played Kansas City, but that game has going to have nothing to do with the game we play when we play them in the playoffs. Because there's going to be several guys that weren't there. Same thing for us with them. They're going to be getting healthier. And if Pacheco comes back or Rashid Rice comes back or their offensive lineman comes back, it's going to feel like a different game because those guys, we didn't play those guys this year.
Right.
As far as our division, I think we've got 2 games and we can lock this whole division up. Like there's nobody who will be able to catch us.
Yeah, right now it's San Francisco, Rams, Detroit, Pats, Jets, Pats.
Right. So we just need to go into San Francisco and play a solid game. I don't think we need to do anything extraordinary in San Francisco this week.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we could, the game, of course you can lose any game, but the game that we really have to show what we're made of is the Detroit game. We have to, of all the games there, that's the one we got to win. Because if we can win that game, it can show, hey, we beat the 2 big boys.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I want to win every game. Let's not be crazy. But yeah, I mean, and 49ers is a big game too. Listen, those are the NFC champs right now. So and everybody who could say they can crown Detroit, they still got to win it. Um, I'll say this: it gives us an advantage when we've got 3 division games at the end of this year, and we know basically the rest of this way, if we can win 4 games, we will have a chance at that number 1 seed if Kansas City trips. So we're putting pressure on Kansas City to keep on playing all their guys. And that in the playoffs might be to our advantage because they might have to keep their foot on their gas. And by the time they get to the playoffs, they might be gassed out. The good
Well,
thing is our division, Miami, is coming up. I really hope Miami puts some games together and ruins some of these teams' outlooks on the playoffs, right? Makes it tougher for them. Because if there's one team, if anybody goes into a Miami Dolphins game and thinks that they're just going to win this game, that would be a mistake. If they go in and go, man, we got this game, that would be a mistake because that team's offense can show up anytime, has not really clicked all year. They just haven't had the time. And the way Jonnu Smith is playing right now, it's impressive. That nobody can stop Jonnu Smith.
yeah. The thing is with Kansas City, they're looking their last games: Raiders, Chargers, Browns, Houston, Pittsburgh, Denver.
They're going to have to play it. They're going to have to play.
Yeah, they're gonna have to play it.
Yeah. Now, in the AFC, you can't sleep on any of those teams. You can't sleep on the Chargers. You can't sleep on of course Baltimore. And nobody's talking about Cincinnati right now. But if they get into tournament, yeah, you'll be able to put 30 on them. But you got to stop them from putting 35 on you.
You could.
And this might be the last gas for this iteration of the Cincinnati Bengals. Because if,
I talked about it. I
yeah,
talked about it.
yeah,
Now, we're getting kind of into Cincinnati. Now he really has saved. He hasn't been out um like he was last year,
right.
but they're not putting it together. They're not putting it together, and that's the problem. If they got rid of Mixon, they're gonna get rid of somebody else. And the
Well,
thing is, you got to put fans in the seats. The only one they're not going to get rid of possibly is the quarterback.
and Chase. They're going to keep Jamar Chase. But T. Higgins is gone.
Higgins is gone, but again, you're going to have to pay Chase, and he may be worth more draft capital for you. Right now, some of these teams may pick up. Chase is an awesome receiver.
Mm-hmm.
You can go out there and talk to, who's got a high. Again, I'm not sure what they need, but you got the Jaguars are looking probably top 5.
Yeah.
You're looking at some teams out there. Again, I don't know who will take him, but you never know.
Well, I think anybody who would take him if they can fit him. I think they're going to sign Jamar Chase to a big, big old deal. They're going to let T. Higgins walk because they're going to have to. Um, and I think it'll be interesting who T. Higgins goes to next year. That team. It'll be interesting to see what he wants. You know what I mean? Because I think as a wide receiver, he's very underrated because when you stand next to a guy like Jamar Chase, you're gonna look not as good, you know? It's just kind of how it is. So I think he's gonna be a commodity out there.
Well, I
Now
think
there's
I think when you look at the playoffs though and the teams, I really think the Super Bowl is going back through the AFC.
I think so. I think so too. I'll tell you this: Cincinnati's my choice right now for if if that team can get in, they can make some waves. I would have said the same thing about Tampa if they would have had Godwin um, and Evans and all their horses. That team gets in, you got to buckle up and play them.
I think Tampa has, Evans played last week. He's
Yeah.
going to need a warm up game. I think Tampa could be a team that really, man, some of these games, now some of them they got blown out, but some of the games they lost by 3 points. Probably, if you look back at their schedule, probably about 4 of them.
Yeah.
And those games were not low scoring games. This was like a, 27 or 30 something, games. So I think Tampa Bay is really the team that when you look at them play, that could be, for me, I think in the NFC is one of the scarier teams.
Yeah. Well, guys, go ahead and tell us who you guys got coming out of what the NFC, coming out of the AFC, and tell us who your biggest surprises are from this year. I think there's been a lot of surprise teams that are either better than you thought they were going to be this year, or the reverse. They're much worse than you thought they were going to be this year. So go ahead and tell us who you got, who was your surprise, either way, worst or in a good way. And let us know in the comments, because we'll like to talk to you about that in the future. Roy?
Yep, and like we always say, talk to a stranger about sports today, especially about football.